Today we are going to work on text formatting. I have a Google Doc in front of that we'll be using, and I have 14 small assignments for you. I'll go down. I'm going to increase the size to about 150. This should help you see it a little bit better. I'm going to number 1, highlight all the below text and change the font. What font did you use? So I'm going to highlight all the text, change the font. Now, if I want to, I can go over to here and type in Comic Sans. Put a space, put a dash, here it is. Now you don't have to do this. I've included this on every one of the 14, but you don't really have to do it if you don't want to. You can skip over this. But I do want you to get used to how to selecting the type and how to changing it. Moving on to number 2, and I'll scroll down. Highlight all the below text and change the font and the font size to 18 point. What font did you use? So I'll select the text. By the way, this is called lorem ipsum. It's called dummy type. These are not words. It's just something to use when we're formatting. So I'm going to change the font from Arial to Georgia, and I will change the size to 18 point. So I've done number 2, and again, if I want to, I can add the name of the font. This is Georgia. Number 2, scrolling down, number 3, highlight all the below text and change the font and the font size to 14 point. So I'm in between pages right now. Doesn't make any difference. I can still select all of the text from the top. I'm going to change the font, and I'm going to follow the directions, change it to 14 point. From now on, I will not be typing in the name of the font. Now, right align or right justified. This is all left justified now. Everything is lined up on the left side. If I go over to here and I click on this, I can now left justify it. So here I am, left justifying, right aligning, justifying it on the right side. Everything is on the right side now. Going down to number 4, highlight all the below text and change the font and the font size to 18 point. Selecting it, changing the font, changing it to 18 point, and now I'm going to center align, and this is center align right here. You can see it. Clicking on it, now it's centered align or justified center. Moving down to number 5, highlight all the below text and change the font and the font size to 12 point. I'm going to highlight it. I'm going to change the font, and it's already at 12 points, so I don't have to do a thing, but I want to justify align. Notice how it's perfectly aligned here, but over on this side, these spaces, these white spaces in between, I can make it look perfectly square by clicking on the justify right here. Clicking on it, now it's perfectly aligned in a justified way. Moving down to number 6, highlight all the below text, change the font and the font size to 14 point. Now left align. What I did on this one, I've given it to you, it is right aligned. Everything on the right hand side is aligned. So the directions call for me to change the font, which is an easy thing to do. Change the font size. Now I'm going to left align, which is what we're used to seeing. Going up here, left align, there it is. Now make the text bold. As long as it is highlighted, selected, I can change it. So I'll go up to this menu and I'm going to click on the capital B and change it to a bold text. You'll notice it's a bit darker now. Moving on to number 7, highlight all the below text and change the font and the font size to 18 point. Selecting it, picking a font, changing it to a 18 point size. Now highlight the first sentence and underline the first sentence. So I'm clicking off it. It's not selected. I'm going to just do the first sentence. There's the period. There's the first sentence. I've selected it. I'm going to now underline it. So I'm going to the underline right here. This is where we want to click, the U with an underline. Selecting it. We have done everything I've asked you to do. You can move on to number 8. Highlight all the below text and change the font and the font size to 16 point. You'll have to type in 16 at the top of the pull down menu. So let me show you why. I've selected it. I'm going to change the font. Now notice we have 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14. There's no 16. It goes to 18, 24. Well, we can go up here and we can simply type in 16, hit our return key, and now we're at 16 point. We did it manually. It wasn't a choice. Now I'm going to change the text color. And I can do that by going over to this icon, the letter A underlined. I can click on it, and I'm going to change it to red. Now make sure it's selected. I've changed it, changed the font, I've changed it to size 16, and I've changed the color. Moving down to number 9, highlight all the below text and change the font and the font size to 18 point. Going to 18. Now change the text color. Going back up to here, I'm going to continue with the red. But notice there's a little tiny little triangle here pointing down. And you'll see them on some of the other menus. This tells you that there's more than one choice. And here's our second choice. We have text and we have highlight. So if I go over to highlight, I'm going to change the background color. I changed it to yellow. When I click off it, I have red text and a yellow background. Moving down to number 10, highlight all the below text and change the font. I'm not changing the font size this time, just changing the name of the font. Change the space between lines to double space. This time we're going over to this icon, clicking the line spacing, click down, and I want to go to a double, clicking double. So now you'll notice the space in between our lines is greater. I've changed it to a double spacing. Moving down to number 11. Highlight all the below text and change the font. Change the list to a numbered list. Now, notice this one. This is no longer in paragraph format. They are sentence after sentence after sentence, all in a row. So if I change the font, I go over here and I have a numbered list. So I click on it, there's my number. And again, we see that small triangle. So if I want to, I can go through and I can try a number of different things. Now I get letters. Back over here, a little more space in between. So give that a try. Moving on to number 12. Highlight all the below text and change the font. Change the list to a bulleted list. And again, this is not a paragraph. This is a list of sentences. I'm going to change the font, which again is a very easy thing to do. Now, instead of making it a numbered list, I'm going to make it a bulleted list, and our bullet is a black circle. But there's a small triangle that tells us that I can change it to stars, or I can change it to boxes that are white with a black background. So give that a try. Number 13, moving down. Highlight all the below text and change the font. Now decrease the indent. So I'm going to highlight the text and I am going to decrease. This is the indent right here. I'm going to decrease the indent. Watch what happens. It moves it over to the left-hand side. So I've decreased the indent. Moving down to number 14, highlight all the below text and change the font. And I made a mistake here. I wanted to increase the indent. So I'm going to highlight it. I'm going to change the font. And this time, instead of decreasing it, I'm going to increase it. Notice everything lined up on it moved to the right from the left. And if I want to decrease it, I can go back and just do the opposite, but it has to be highlighted. So I've gone through numbers 1 through 14 for you. You can see the things that I've done. And when you're done with your paper, this is what it will look like, and it should save to your Google Drive.